Emilie and I just want to provide a little framing of some of the new partnership that is bringing you this winter series, and the Expanding Agroforestry Regional Knowledge Exchange Network in Virginia is a project that's helping to support and partner with ASD on this Ask an Agroforester webinar series this winter, and that's funded by SARE, Southern SARE, and the following partners are bringing that project together. So we're really excited to join forces with ASD. And so what is the Ark Exchange? It's really a peer-to-peer learning network. It includes farmers, NGOs, universities, technical service providers, ag educators. It's a way also for us to share information through farm tours, webinars, recorded videos. The footprint is Appalachian states and beyond. If you'd like to join the listserv, you can email me at ketrazo@vt.edu with the subject line Join Ark Exchange Listserv. There's also a website coming soon and farm tours as well. And we just want to acknowledge that this is something that's been intended for many years, and initially by the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grants program, which is led by Virginia Tech's Forest Resources and Environmental Conservation Department. And that's Ian Nichols and John Munsell, who were able to help initiate this project through funding with the Edwards Mother Earth Foundation. And they coordinate the Ark Exchange. And other projects have been able to support and build upon this and join forces. And that includes the agroforestry trainings for natural resource professionals, which Emilie will share more about, as well as the project I just shared, which we are calling the SARE Ark Exchange. So we're all coming together collectively to help move the network forward. And I'm going to pass it to Emilie now.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for that warm welcome. And thank you so much for all your hard work on this year so far. This has been really fun to have the opportunity to collaborate. And I just want to say welcome and welcome back to everybody. I see some familiar names in the attendees from folks who were here last year, and I see a lot of new names. So that's all. It's really exciting to see y'all, and I hope you'll continue to tune in for some of the sessions as we move forward through the year. We're going to have 10 Ask an Agroforester sessions this year, all focused on just deep dive into agroforestry topics. And if this stuff is interesting to you and you haven't checked it out before, you can Google Ask an Agroforester and go to our YouTube channel that has the ASD YouTube channel that has seven deep dive episodes on some really fun stuff. So I hope you'll check those out. Let's go ahead and there you go. Awesome. So I'm an agroforester. I work for Appalachian Sustainable Development. Our mission is to build a thriving regional food and ag system that creates healthy communities, respects the planet, and cultivates profitable opportunities for Appalachians. So we've been around for about 25 years. We've got all kinds of programming and all of it is rooted in agriculture. But we've got everything from grow your own programs to a bustling food hub and a food box program. We have veterans farming initiatives, agroforestry, a very robust agroforestry department these days, and we're just growing all the time. So next slide. I do want to plug one piece of programming, and you'll probably hear a little bit more about ASD and programming as we go on throughout this season. Today, we're going to try to keep everything really brief because we have 3 panelists and a lot to talk about. But I do want to plug this one program, Agroforestry Trainings for Natural Resources Professionals. So this is a series of online self-paced classes and then there's also field days associated with them throughout Virginia and throughout Appalachia. But the online courses are really great. There's 2 that are free for everybody. There's the Intro to Agroforestry and there's Social Competencies in Agroforestry. Those are both free to everybody at learnagroforestry.com. I'll type that in. And so I know that didn't hyperlink, but you can copy and paste. So you can check those out. And then there's also alley cropping, silvopasture, and forest farming in addition to that are on a paid basis, but it's really inexpensive. And also that work is funded by some of the same grant funding that makes this session available today. So I encourage you all to check those out if you're really interested in some deep learning on these subjects. Okay, before we get into things with our grant folks today, we're going to take a little poll. We have to do this for our grant reporting, so please fill it out. And I'm launching that now. One question should only take you a couple seconds. So this helps us report who we've been able to offer information and help train, and it also helps the presenters know what type of audience they're speaking to this evening. I'm going to give it just a little bit longer because I see like 65% participation. Oops, 77. We're going up. We're going up. 79. Give it 10 more seconds. All right, we capped out at 84% participation. I'll take it. So I'm going to share these results. Can you all see that? Okay, awesome. So a lot of farmers, a lot of NRPs, and then a good bit of both. And if you are feeling friendly and want to share in the chat where you're at and what you're up to, that's a nice way for us to kind of like get a sense of things too. And yeah, the chat is a great place for people to engage during this programming. So feel free to get active in there. All right, next slide, Katie. So here's where we're headed, our funding edition. The reason we put this particular session together is because we're all, a lot of us in this sphere are working on multiple grants, and a lot of us are getting questions about all these grants. And there are 3 in particular right now that have a lot of overlap and are really great opportunities, and that we're all kind of working on, and there's a lot of crossover. So we thought, why don't we just get together and see if we can kind of like demystify some of this, clear this up a little bit, and help people get the information they need so they can apply for funding and work towards successful projects. So we're going to speak with Ian Nichols, who's an agroforestry project associate at Virginia Tech, Leif Gonzales-Kramer, who's CEO and co-founder of Working Trees, and Audrey Schmidt, who's agroforestry program manager for the Nature Conservancy. And we are going to start, slide please, Katie. I think that's our final. Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
so
switch over.
Awesome.
I'll stop sharing.
Great. We are going to start with Ian Nichols, who's with the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant Program. So I'm just going to give you all a little intro to him. Ian Nichols is an agroforestry project associate at Virginia Tech. He spent many years as a wildlife photographer working in Central Africa, and through that, saw the importance of agroecology to human well-being and wildlife conservation. He returned to university to study conservation biology, received a Fulbright to study cocoa agroforestry systems in Cameroon. With Virginia Tech, he hopes to expand and normalize agroforestry systems in the USA. And as someone who works a lot with Ian, like I love hearing your like punchline about what you're working for, because that absolutely is what he's doing all the time. He's really hustling for that and working on a lot of different programming. So we're lucky and happy to have him here. And with that, I'm going to turn myself off and let Ian do his thing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Excuse me. I'll share my screen. So we're running the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant Program. And we started 2 years ago, and so far we've had our first round of funding, and now we're going to have our second round of funding coming up again. Excuse me. So with the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant Program, we're trying to, it's in the name, we're trying to catalyze agroforestry across the US. And so we're funding all agroforestry practices, the 6 USDA approved ones, but then also you can integrate different practices. You can come up with your own as long as they make sense and they work on your farm. It's integrating agroforestry into your farm. And so we have funding up to $1,500 an acre. And so we also provide technical assistance at the end. And so we're really working with people that are applying that have a strong idea in their head of what they want to do. Like they've got a design ready, and then we're going to help them refine that. And so the applications are going to be accepted from all states except for Alaska. And again, that's that goal to catalyze agroforestry, to get farms around the US that people can actually go and see what they're doing, see how these practices work in the real life situation. And so as part of that, as Katie mentioned, we've got the Agroforestry Regional Knowledge Exchange. And that's really to get at creating positive change. And so one of the best ways to do that is to see, oh, my neighbor is putting in this practice. We've been told our whole lives not to put trees in pasture, but this person in my community is doing it and it's working. And so it's building that peer-to-peer learning network. And so between farmers, NGOs, universities, and especially the technical service providers. And with that, each person that gets the grant is then agreeing to hold one of these outreach sessions. So it could be a farm tour, it could be a webinar, a recorded video, something like this. We had a panel discussion at the VPAF conference recently with 3 of our awardees. And we also understand, because forest farming is part of this grant, that things like if you're growing ginseng, you might not want to do a farm tour. And so that's why we have these other options to engage with your community. And so far with silvopasture, we've had 17 projects completed. So that's over 131 acres we planted. Well, our awardees have planted more than 10,000 trees. And so we still have 7 to finish in the spring. So that's about 50 acres and another 3,000 trees. And so then on the forest farming side, we've had 50 acres of forest protected. And that's 22 forest farms we've established or expanded. And then we have 6 more to finish in the spring. And so initially we thought, okay, we'll just keep it between these 2 agroforestry practices. But through the grant and people's applications, what people want to do, we realized it's best to open it up to all practices. So just to give you an example of some of our farms. Sorry, I gotta move something. And also our geographic range. Initially, we were only in the Appalachian regions. But so this is a farm in Ohio, and they planted 485 trees. And you can see it's a mix of loblolly to get shade initially, and then some other trees for long-term gain. And so they planted chestnut because in the end, and pecans, they're thinking about doing pig farming. And so they would run the pigs through these systems and clean up the acorns and have acorn finished pork. And you can also see from the photo, like this is one of the ways to manage these systems is running electric wire along the tubes. And so this is a good example of one of our applicants in Maryland. And she wanted to do, she's got wool sheep. And so she wanted to do, add fodder to that. So she didn't have as much food costs. And so with that, she added honey locust for the pods and then persimmons. And because she's doing wool sheep and she doesn't have a high stocking rate, she opted for a grid, which she uses with her electrical netting. And you can see like this is someone who's developed a well-thought plan and they just need the extra funding to get it through the gate and complete it. And so this is one of our forest farm, Palace Slope Farm near North Carolina. And so they planted 6,000 understory botanicals. And on that side of the forest farming, like it's a lot of work. Like you have to be prepared to hand plant usually most of all the seeds. And that can be a very big effort for 6,000 seeds. And so in Virginia, another farm, this was a very intense managed system they put in. And so it's 10,000, more than 10,000 trees, and that's 7 acres. And so it's a mix of poplars, black locusts, and some nut trees. And the goal is to, as the nut trees grow, then taking out some of those smaller support species with coppicing and pollarding. And this is a food forest farm, Jubilee Climate Farm in Virginia. And so they planted very densely, lots of fruit trees, but they're also studying the carbon impact of these types of systems. And so that's why there's also lots of nitrogen fixers in their mix. And they're just going to graze sheep between the alleys of fruit trees. This is the community. So the community has access to the fruit trees, but then also learning how to then put in these systems in temperate environments. And this is a farm that has lots of people from the tropics. And so they're used to learning how to farm in the tropics, and this gives them the ability to farm in the temperate climate, the learning ability. And this is another farm in Virginia. It's another food forest type farm. And so they have a CSA. And so by adding this food forest to the CSA, they're being able to add more fruit and nuts to their actual CSA production. And so again, they planted a lot of trees, but they're also, by collecting a lot of cultivars, being a plant bank. And so the value of those plants is stored in this place. Again, with that, they put in some fruit shrubs to then aid to the CSA. And this is another example, getting agriculture into more urban areas. And so in Ohio, we have a producer that wants to spread more forest farming practices throughout the Northeast Ohio cities. And so within that suburban environment, that urban environment, where there's forest, they're planting these botanical understories. And so with that, they're able to plant all these golden seal rootlets and spread the knowledge of these botanical species and increase the knowledge in the community. And this is a beginning farmer, just so you know, we've funded lots of pilot projects so people can understand, kind of get their foot in the door and see what methods work best for them. And so this was just a pilot project, 2 acres, and they planted hybrid hazelnuts, some pine and chestnuts. And this is their goal, get some value added product. And so they were initially thinking ice cream and then adding different values from the orchard to that end value product. And so again, so the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant Program, this is a direct support to producers, and it's up to $1,500 an acre. And so again, if you sign up to do this grant, you're then also signing up to be part of the Ark Exchange to facilitate that peer-to-peer learning. And so the application is always open and rolling. And so we will have a next round of funding in April 2024, but any applications that come in, we look at, and then we can fund if they come in. And then also, then we have this next deadline to fund them. And so the website's below, and this project's managed by Virginia Tech, but then we also working with Appalachian Sustainable Development. Thankfully, thank you guys for this webinar. Rural Action, North Carolina University, and Silviculture in Maryland. And with that, I'm finished.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian, for sharing. And I see that there are questions coming in. Just a reminder, if you're asking questions, please try to ask them in the Q&A function instead of in the chat, because we're saving up that list of questions for the panelists to answer at the end. So I know everyone's excited to get their questions answered, but we're going to roll onward and talk to Leif next, and then we'll batch all our questions at the end. So just a little intro to Leif. Leif Gonzales-Kramer is the COO and co-founder of Working Trees, where he helps get farmers paid for growing trees through carbon markets, and they've launched the first agroforestry carbon project in the US. Leif loves developing solutions that help both the people and the planet, which is what led him to Working Trees. He also enjoys spending time on the land, having worked as a ranch hand on 3 different regenerative ranching operations across Iowa, California, and Washington. He graduated with a bachelor's and master's in Earth Systems from Stanford University. Welcome, Leif.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Emily. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you, Katie, as well. And it's great to be up here with all these wonderful panelists as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I am assuming that is working. If it's not,
yep,
someone
we can
shout.
see.
Okay, great. And I'm quite bright. Put this down a bit. So hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Excited to chat with you all today. I'm going to talk about one of the other grant opportunities that exist to essentially catalyze agroforestry. And I'm going to be talking specifically about ASSETS, which stands for Accelerating Silvopasture Adoption and Carbon Sequestration through emerging markets and technologies. It's definitely a mouthful. That's why we call it assets. And I, as was already mentioned, am a co-founder of Working Trees, which gets farmers paid for growing trees through carbon markets. And we, in addition to Virginia Tech and ASD, are leading this program to essentially help producers like yourselves deploy trees on your land and get paid for it. And we're going to be targeting the states of Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. So sorry if this does not apply to you, but maybe we'll be launching other states in the near future. So there we go. Today, I already kind of covered most of this, but objectives for this chat is I'm going to tell you about the assets program. I'm going to let you know if you're eligible, and then I'm going to tell you how you can get involved if interested. And in terms of our agenda for today, I'll talk about general program overview. I'll discuss the financial incentives. I'll talk a bit about carbon markets, as that's a big part of the value we bring to the table for producers. We'll talk about the overall financial incentive package, eligibility and commitments, and then how to get involved at the end. So very high level, the assets program merges public and private sector funding to get you paid for growing trees through carbon markets. We offer three main types of value. So the first one is technical assistance. So our wonderful partners, VT and ASD, help you, the producer, design a silvopasture system that works for you in your land and your producer goals. We also offer upfront payments of up to $1,500 per acre to install and deploy silvopasture. And this upfront payment comes from the USDA in the form of we put together an application. We got something called a Conservation Innovation Grant. It's a couple $1 million project that I already said is targeting the states of Virginia, Tennessee, and North Carolina to help scale silvopasture in the region. And then on the private market side, private sector side, we essentially provide ongoing payments for the carbon you sequester in your silvopasture plantings of up to $90 per acre per year. So before I move on into more of the program specifics, I just wanted to take a second and talk about carbon markets. There's probably a big spread of people here who might know a lot about carbon markets. Maybe you're already enrolled in one, and there's probably a fair amount of folks that aren't super familiar with carbon markets. So what is a carbon market? Well, around the world, there are lots of large companies and small companies that have really large carbon footprints, and they are seeking to reduce those emissions. They're facing a lot of pressure to reduce those emissions. So they reduce as much as they can, but then at a certain point, they need to remove what remains in terms of their carbon footprint. And so that is when they pay someone else to essentially remove that carbon from the atmosphere, and that's your carbon market. So that's on the demand side, these large companies, but on the supply side, a lot of you might know that producers, farmers, landowners, land stewards, they are really, really critical in scaling nature-based removals or trees, soil carbon to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. And silvopasture is actually the world's largest natural climate solution that exists to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. And so that is why we're focusing on this as a practice, because it has the greatest potential to have a climate impact, and it also has the ability to benefit your bottom line. So how does this whole program work? So Working Trees, to give a bit more information as to who we are as a company, we are actually the first agroforestry carbon project developer in the United States. So we're the first one to get farmers paid for incorporating trees into agricultural systems. We also bring the science and the technology to measure silvopasture carbon stock, so how much carbon you've sequestered in your trees. We do that in a very accurate and auditable way. And then we also bring connections to carbon credit buyers to this whole assets program. And that's important because a lot of producers, they might sequester carbon, but it's hard for a producer to approach, for example, a Microsoft and be like, hey, Microsoft, buy my 100 credits. That would be a hard sell. So we essentially aggregate producers to then go to a Microsoft, for example, and say, hey, Microsoft, why don't you buy our 100,000 credits from our 1,000 producers? So we create kind of like a marketplace. And then on the other side, we have Virginia Tech and Appalachian Sustainable Development leading the silvopasture technical service and producer engagement. So they're the ones really helping producers think through what is the best silvopasture system I can deploy on my land to achieve my production goals. All right, so how much can you get paid from carbon? Unfortunately, there's a lot of nuance into coming up with the numbers, your revenue forecast. Like, it depends on where you plant your trees. It depends on what trees that you plant. It depends on how many trees you plant. But on average, well, not on average, the dollar per carbon credit, which essentially means the amount of money you get for sequestering 1 ton of carbon, that's a carbon credit. If you get paid before you've sequestered it, that's $35 per ton or $35 per credit. If you sequester a bunch of carbon and then we go sell it for you, you get $45 per ton. So after you've actually sequestered carbon, you'll get $45 a ton, which is higher obviously than 35, because in 35, it's a projected impact as well. So how many tons are you sequestering per acre per year? Again, that depends a lot on what systems you've deployed on your land. On average, you can expect to get 1 to 2 tons of carbon sequestered per year. You can get higher, up to 4 approximately, but that's if you're really maximizing for carbon. And then per acre per year, you're looking at around $35 to $90 per of revenue, carbon revenue per acre per year. So combining that with the upfront payments, this is a projected spread of what you could see from participating in our carbon program. So on the left, sorry, these are such a lot of small text here, but I'll break it down. So on the left here, you have like your $1,500 maximum install payment. This is all per acre. That's your 0. And then you have 4 different colored bars here, and they all kind of pertain to different planting systems with different sequestration rates. So blue, you're like looking at really high, fast growing species and a really like nice environment, like great site location, great soil, lots of water. And you can get to some pretty substantial returns. If you focus on faster growing species, you start to see less returns. This is illustrative, but this gives you a general idea of the returns you could see from carbon over the 30-year program. So in terms of eligibility and commitments, so as I already mentioned, Virginia, Tennessee, and North Carolina are the 3 states we're focused on now. Let us know if you want us to get some SIG funding for other states, and we'll go work on that for you. In terms of practices that we're focusing on, silvopasture and alley cropping, specifically hay alley cropping, are the types of practices we're supporting. We don't have a minimum acreage requirement, which is something we're proud of. And then for past, there's also something we have to check for like the carbon markets. We basically cannot pay you to plant trees in an area where you just cut down trees. So we just do a quick remote check, or satellite check of your land to make sure you didn't just cut down all your trees. In terms of eligibility requirements, you must be EQIP eligible, and then the commitment duration. So it's a 30-year. When you sign up for the assets program, it's you sign up to get paid for carbon revenue for 30 years, and then in return, you agree not to cut down your trees for 30 years. So with that is the gist of the program. If you're interested in checking this out, go to this website, workingtrees/assets, and you can submit an application right there. It takes probably like 2 minutes. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at contact@workingtrees.com. We've had some great initial traction. We have 20 producers in our pipeline already after launching just a few months ago. So we're excited to work with you all and get some trees planted. And with that is all I have. Thank you for coming out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leif. And just a shout out to Leif for being here. I appreciate you. And I just, so far, I really enjoyed working with you. You have a very pleasant manner and you do a nice job, like making things very straightforward and approachable. So thanks again.
The pleasure's all mine.
All right. And last but not least, I'm going to introduce Audrey Schmidt at the Nature Conservancy. Audrey joined TNC in 2023 as the Agroforestry Program Manager for the Nature Conservancy's North America Regenerative Agriculture Program. In this role, she manages a $60 million USDA Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities grant to advance agroforestry as a natural climate solution, working collaboratively with staff and partners throughout the United States. For more than 10 years, Audrey has worked at the nexus of regenerative ag and environmental conservation, demonstrating great success at convening new networks of multi-sector interests into coalitions working towards a shared goal. She has previously held positions at Chesapeake Farm to Table, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and Propagate Ventures. Audrey holds a master's in geography and a graduate certificate in food systems, the environment, and public health from Johns Hopkins University. She lives in Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. And thank you so much for being here, Audrey. Looking forward to hearing from you about this really exciting project. And y'all, Audrey's a boss. I don't know if you caught that she's managing a $60 million USDA partnership, but that's a lot. She's hustling. So thank you, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you. And none of it is possible without all of the partners that we work with to make it happen, including ASD and Virginia Tech and Working Trees. So it's a small world, and a lot of these projects are overlapping with the same familiar faces, trying to work towards, these shared, large, ambitious goals. So great to be here today. Loved seeing on that poll how many producers are here. So really excited to chat with you all today. So briefly, I think there were some questions in the Q&A in terms of, is some of this funding from private sources? Is some of this funding from public? And this particular project is decidedly public. Federal dollars coming from USDA. It's basically Secretary Vilsack, the head of USDA, has unlocked $3.1 billion across 141 projects, which is really exciting. And our project is just one of many, but so we have a $60 million project with a big goal to get 30,000 acres of agroforestry planted over the next 5 years. And as you guys know, these are agroforestry practices that are typically mentioned by USDA. Urban, I probably should add urban agroforestry in here as the sixth one. For this particular project, we are really looking at these 3 agroforestry practices. So alley cropping, windbreaks, and silvopasture. We love riparian buffers. We love forest farming. Our concept with this particular grant is riparian buffers benefit from existing water quality funding, so they have a certain amount of traction. And with the first 3 practices, we can really help add agroforestry on landscapes, agricultural working lands that don't yet have agroforestry on them. And forest farming is kind of a different audience type, if you will, working with forested landowners. So that's kind of the logic behind why we went with those first 3. Want to make a special note on silvopasture that for this particular project, we are only doing additive silvopasture or adding trees to pasture. We're not doing what is sometimes called subtractive silvopasture or, woodlot conversion to grazing. So that's just an important note depending on which direction you're looking for silvopasture. So at a high level, our project is working across 30 different states. So we have 30 states that are eligible. And we couldn't do this without our regional lead. So TNC is kind of, at the national level, the convening partner. We help process a lot of the payments and the contracts, but we really look to our regional lead partners and additional partners on the grant to help us do producer outreach, do the technical assistance, really that on-the-ground expertise that is so needed for figuring out what is the right fit agroforestry practice and agroforestry cropping system for a particular producer. So really important there. And in general, with our project, we have kind of several different bodies of work that I'll run through quickly. So outreach, recruitment, and awareness building. I loved how, Ian, you said that, you know, your work is to normalize agroforestry, and I couldn't agree more. You know, agroforestry is it's an ancient practice that's been used, especially by indigenous communities for millennia, but using agroforestry in modern US agriculture, that's exciting for us to see that at scale. And so there's a lot of work to be done to begin to normalize it. So we know, I'm going to skip ahead for a quick second. We know that a lot of the work that we'll do over the next 5 years will just be working with innovators and early adopters. We're not yet at early majority. So some of the work that we'll do around outreach and recruitment, some of those producers might not plant a single tree over the next 5 years. And that's okay, because maybe they'll plant a tree in year 7 or year 12. The main bulk of our project is the incentive payment program. So probably why you guys are here on this webinar today. And that's coupling financial incentives with technical assistance. And really, we know that some of the major barriers to agroforestry is that folks don't have the cash on hand to install new tree systems. So we know that that's really important for producers to say yes to agroforestry. And then also for them to kind of work side by side, shoulder to shoulder with an expert who can help them think through what is best for their land. We want a lot more demonstration sites. There's a lot of reporting requirements with this particular grant. And then I'll just briefly note that we do have a lot of work around enabling conditions to support all the pieces that need to happen at the same time for agroforestry to really be sustainable for the long haul. And we're really proud of our $60 million budget. Majority of it, 60%, is going to go directly to producers to pay for trees. And so the remaining 24 is really helping with capacity building of our partners and some of those other pieces that I mentioned previously. So for the incentive payment program, at $36 million, that is part of the $60 million, there's a multi-step process. I know that this is a busy slide. On our webpage, you guys can take a minute and look at it longer, but basically the very first step to enter the queue, if you will, for our program is to join our email list. By joining our email list, we'll connect you to your regional lead. You'll become aware of upcoming application deadlines, if there's outreach and engagement events that you can join. So really recommend folks starting there. Twice per year, there are application cycles, and that's where we have an online application that you can fill out to put your name in the hat to say, hey, I've got an idea for my land and what I want to do. If you're selected into the program at this stage, step 3, that is where we will we will partner you up with technical assistance staff at one of our project partner organizations. So it might be your regional lead, it might be another group like Appalachian Sustainable Development, but you will have somebody in the weeds with you figuring out tree species selection, density, thinking through your procurement plan, your marketing plan, all of those pieces. And ultimately, in addition to kind of that design for your farm, that person will also help you with the eligibility paperwork that we need to acquire from USDA for your farm. So for example, if your farm is not yet registered with FSA, that is something that we need to do at this step 3, and we've got staff to help support you and hold your hand through that process. Once you've got that design and you have the eligibility documentation in hand, that's when you hand those 2 pieces to TNC, and that's when you enter a contractual agreement with TNC. And at that moment, a clock starts for you have 18 months to get the trees in the ground. We know procurement can be challenging, so we want folks to have enough lead time to actually get the trees in the ground. And you'll get your first installment of the incentive payment, a majority of it within 30 days of signing on the dotted line of that contract. And we know that's important to have the majority up front. We purposely designed it that way because we know a lot of other programs might be cost share or it's a reimbursement basis. And that's just tough for farmers from a cash flow perspective to have to float that money. So that's why we're putting the majority of the incentive payment in the hands of producers up front to help with that. And then you get your second installment after you plant the trees, importantly to NRCS conservation practice standards. And then your final payment comes in the last year of the program in 2028 when you need to do some measurements of the trees, DBH measurements. If folks are, I should just quickly note this, if you apply to the program and you're not selected, you will get feedback on your application, and as long as you're eligible, you'll be invited to apply again. So I just want to make that note. There's, twice per year applications, so there's going to be multiple chances to get in. In the application, we also really want to encourage folks to consider signing up to be demonstration farms or science research sites. So there's an opportunity to say, hey, I'm willing to be a demonstration farm. Hey, I'm willing to have researchers come on and collect soil data or collect social science research. It's really wide and interdisciplinary what that can look like. So really quickly, there's a lot here, and I know we only have a limited time to talk today, but there's two major categories of our incentive payment. The first, category 1, includes a per tree installation cost, and this gets calculated in step 3 when you're working with that technical assistance provider, and it's based on the specifics and the details of your farm's design. And roughly, usually it's going to come around $30 per tree, but that can really go up or down depending, again, on your particular farm. But I like to give people the fact that it's probably going to be about $30 per tree. But you also get a transition incentive. So we know one of the pain points with agroforestry is that folks are maybe taking land out of production or some other crop out of production, and they're not getting that revenue. And so this transition incentive of $450 is paid out in 3 different installments to help alleviate that particular piece. And then the second category is, so category 2 is very similar, except instead of that $30 per tree installation cost incentive, instead the producer is coming to the table with some other funding. So it might be third-party financing, it might be from an ag lender that they got an operating loan, it might be another grant like Catalyzing Agroforestry that you guys heard earlier today. Importantly, it has to be bringing funding from somewhere else that is not from a federal source. You cannot stack any federal programs with this program, but if you have private sources of funding, that is very much welcome, and that's where you can stack it, and that's where a producer would be getting that transition incentive. The logic behind this is, while 36 million might sound like a lot, we know that 36 million in 5 years is going to come and go, and so we want to expand the menu of options of financing products that fit the needs of agroforestry producers, because today most agricultural financing products are built for annual corn, soy, wheat, you name it, producers. And so how can we help those financiers understand what other options could be so that we have great options for the long haul for agroforestry? Really briefly, minimum and max. The minimum is 5 acres, except in Hawaii, it's 1 acre. And then the maximum, there's no maximum acreage, but there is a dollar ceiling, which is $450K. I think an important piece here, if you rent land, if you lease land, you are eligible for this program. And the logic there is we want to make this accessible for underserved producers who typically might be the kinds of folks who are leasing land. You have to be able to prove that you have control of the land through 2028 through a lease. So required paperwork, you got to be willing to play ball to get the required paperwork, which again, a staff member will help you help you actually acquire the paperwork. There are 7 different types of underserved producers, so really important to us to, again, make this useful and available to as many underserved producers as possible. As I mentioned, the contracts with us for this program will be through 2028. That's the end of our award period. And the contract will be between the producer and TNC, and TNC will process the financial payments as well. And it's important here, some of these other partnerships for climate smart commodities grants might be using some type of carbon payment program. The ownership of ecosystem services, including carbon, remain with the producer, and they are, willing and able. You can do whatever you want with it. We have no requirements in terms of any participation in any particular programs. So here's the online application. It's twice per year. The next application deadline will be coming up in June. I highly recommend, because this is pretty short and it's pretty robust program, please go read the FAQ document that's available at nature.org/expanding agroforestry. It's about 10 pages long. Hopefully it has a lot of the questions that you might have. And then finally, would love if you all, as kind of an action item, can join our email list. If you go again to nature.org/expanding agroforestry, you'll see this little box for join the email list. So appreciate being here today, getting to share this, and really welcoming questions that folks have, because this is pretty short to be able to share, but really thank you guys. And also thanks to ASD and VTech for hosting this event.
Thanks so much, Audrey, and thanks to all the presenters. We've got quite a few questions coming in. As mentioned, we'll do the first part of our Q&A with some questions that were submitted before today's session. So, Katie, if you don't mind putting it on gallery view, and if the panelists can all just put their camera on, and we'll just we'll start firing. So this first round, I think, will clear up some of the common questions. First question, is it acceptable to receive funding from multiple grant programs? So how can these stack, or how can these explicitly not stack together, these grant programs? And it can be a free-for-all, whoever wants it.
I'm happy to take a little bit. I know I already kind of said this, but for our particular program, you're welcome to leverage outside private sources of funding. They just can't be public.
Yeah, and I'll go, since we're private, we can integrate into the other two grants.
And Ian, since you're involved in all three grants, will you just clarify which one when you say since we're private?
Oh, sorry, the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Because we use a combination of public and private, we can't stack the federal funding. So unfortunately.
Excellent. And can y'all speak a little bit for each program to just like equip to the equip regulations and regulatory piece, and any stacking that may or may not happen there, just to like really make sure we're super clear about it?
Yeah, I can take that. So equip, there's like 3 main requirements for participating in equip and being eligible for equip. 1, your farm income has to be less than $900,000. And then you also need to be compliant with the highly erodible land, that's HELC, and the wetland conservation program. So those are two things, or 3 things that need to be compliant with to participate in the assets program, at least.
All right. How can farmers be sure they're not double dipping into the federal funds on the same piece of land?
So one way to go about doing that is there is something called the subsidiary print form, and that helps producers. It's a document that USDA creates. And so you can get your subsidiary print form from your local USDA county office, and that will tell you which programs you are formally under contract for. So that's a great way to kind of make sure that you're not using federal funds on the same land and kind of double dipping in the wrong way there, or stacking in the wrong way, I should say.
Yeah, and we've gotten this question a bit lately, so I've had to do some digging personally into this. And I think it's important to just note that there is some onus on producers to be doing that work behind the scenes to really make sure, because some of the ways the land units are delineated can be it can be a little confusing. And it's also not something that, because of privacy regulations, it's not something that other people have access to. So it really is, there is some due diligence on the part of the landowner associated with these.
And Emily, can I just add something there too? For
please.
Our particular program, we're having producers sign basically attestation that they are not doing that. So that's one of the mechanisms for us to ensure that. So yeah, again, that falls on the producer to make sure.
I'm going to drop a link in the chat too. I meant to actually do this right before the questions opened up. This is a Google form that y'all can all click through to that has a good comparative table of the different grants. Like makes it very clear that CAGP is private funded and that Working Trees, that Assets Grant has private and public and federal funding, and that EAP is federally funded. So it has that comparison for all three grants. So that should be really helpful too as we move forward. So deadlines and application timelines, I'll refer y'all to the tables for that. Oh, I did have one clarifying question on the CAGP April. It says April 1st in the table. Is that when you're announcing the next round of funding, or is that when the deadline for applications for that piece of funding is? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
The deadline for applications, but it's a rolling application process. So if a good application comes in, they can still be funded outside of that deadline.
Okay. And is that I know y'all mentioned a priority that's loose, right? So sorry, let me rephrase. Is April 1st listed in the table, is that when the first award for this cycle comes out?
No, that's just the deadline, and then within that next month, we'll decide who gets the
Excellent.
award, because we want to get people in before the planting season.
Yeah, definitely. Great, thank you. Let's see. How detailed or professional do the agroforestry plans and budgets have to be for these application processes? And that's something that I'll just ask each of y'all to weigh in on. Maybe we can just go in order that y'all presented before. If Ian, you want to start?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Yeah. The question is, how detailed or professional do the agroforestry plans and budgets need to be for the application process?
Yes. So because the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant is statewide, it's very competitive. So it's just a matter of having that best application in.
All right. Leif, would you like to?
Yeah, for assets, the application doesn't require you to have an agroforestry plan. So like the first step is just to submit your information, and then we confirm that you're eligible, and you follow those EQIP standards or requirements. And then we also do like our own internal check to make sure you're compliant with carbon market requirements. But then we work with you to develop your plan, like with our technical service providers like VT and ASD.
And I'll say for expanding agroforestry project, the more the merrier in terms of how robust you can make your application. That really helps us when we're doing our review, have as comprehensive of an understanding of how sophisticated you already are in your thinking, or kind of are you early in your journey and will need support, which it's all welcome. And primarily, no matter kind of the state that somebody is giving a design, everybody gets technical assistance after they're selected. So, but again, really want to encourage people to make it as comprehensive as possible at the time of application. That really helps.
Great, thanks, y'all. So this follow-up question relates directly. It says, will a technical support person be available to speak with farmers? So we answered that. And it says, if so, are there different ones for the different states, and how would a person go about contacting someone, finding their point of contact for that? And so I know that's later on in the process for some of y'all, so that might be a different answer for everybody.
I can quickly answer that for us. When you join our email listserv, you'll be connected with your regional lead, and then they kind of take it from there, and each of them kind of do it differently, but you'll at least be connected with that first person, and all of them can provide at least some level of support for preparing your application, but it's not the full robust technical assistance that happens afterwards.
Gotcha.
Our geography is pretty constrained, so we only have 2 technical service providers, and they're all wonderful. And so when you submit an application, we essentially ask you to prefer to work with VT or ASD, and then we'll connect you to them to figure out what plans work for you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I'll just say, repeating what Audrey said before, like we're taking a old traditional practice and then bringing it back in. And so there's a wealth of resources out there. Tree Crops by Jay Russell is a great start.
Yeah,
and so
plug.
We're across states, and so within those states, we're going to have different regional partners, and we can put you in contact with them. But it's like we said, it's more developing a good plan that works with your farm. And then on the back end, we can give you technical service advice. And so we can help. We have design software to help you actually lay out your farm so you can see it in a PDF. You can see out the layout and the design.
Awesome. Thanks, friends. So how do these contracts carry over in the case of land sale? So if someone puts in a big project and then, they want to get off their farm, what happens for the next landowner?
I can take that. So for the carbon program, so it's a long-term contract. We essentially, when you sign up for our carbon program and start generating revenue on your tree plantings, we essentially put an addendum to the deed of the land, basically saying like, oh, this contract will carry over when it's sold to someone else. And so they will retain that value of carbon revenue when that land is exchanged.
I'm totally honest. I do not remember right now what's in the producer contract for how it works. If I'm like, so yeah, sorry, I don't know the answer at the top of my head, but I can get it to you.
Great. Thanks, Audrey.
The grant program is really within the time you're signed up with the contracted through us. And so once the grant period is ended and you've completed the project, there's not any issues like that. We don't have carbon credits or any long-term commitment.
Yeah, so you guys are probably noticing that CAGP is not only the only fully privately funded grant, but also the most flexible and short-term of these grants, just if that pattern is helpful for folks. All right, so that wraps, oh wait, no, one last one before we move to the Q&A that's live right now. For the EAP, what time do the regional organizers play in the process? Do they provide? So in terms of technical assistance, like how deep is the technical assistance, I think is what this question is getting at. Like, will they help you find labor and plant materials and like all of that? Or is it more just design help?
So it's definitely design, and where possible, our project partners help support on procurement, but ultimately, right, the producer is going to be on the hook for figuring out all of their full procurement plan, but our project partners will help them think through all the pieces that will be required to have a successful project.
Okay, great. And Audrey, if I could just keep you off mute, I've got a couple of EAP questions lined up. So we're going to move into the live Q&A now. And if someone has a question that they'd really like to ask with their voice, you can click the raise hand icon in the bottom, and it'll let us know that you would like to ask a question in that way. And we are open to those. But we're going to go ahead. So a question about EAP. I'm an agroforestry consultant. Can my consulting services be included in the grant? I assume in the grant budget. How would that work?
So this is a great question that we've definitely gotten before. So when we created the award budget, we made the choice that we wanted to create full-time positions with benefits, basically based at our project partners organizations, instead of a per project, looping in a consultant fee. So basically everybody who's selected for the program will get free technical assistance from our project partners, but in an event where a producer already has a technical assistance provider that they really love working with, they're welcome to work with that person before the application and develop the plan, but the producer will be on the hook for paying for those costs. We just simply don't have that in our budget for that mechanism to pay for consultants that way. And then it will be that after they're selected, they will have to work with our project partners on that eligibility documentation with USDA.
Okay, thank you. And also for EAP, how is the $30 per tree funding amount calculated?
Sure. So it on average will come out to be about $30. I feel like that's also a misconception I've heard where people are like, it's exactly $30. No, it will depend on your project. So basically we have a calculator for costs that our technical assistance providers will use. It's standard across all 30 states. And basically, depending on the details of your project, once you're in that technical assistance phase, will determine exactly what your final per tree incentive payment will be.
Excellent. All right. Is silvopasture practice when forage introduction? So this is a forest conversion question. Are any of these grants able to support subtractive silvopasture? We heard from Audrey specifically that EAP is not. Do the you two like to weigh in, Leif and Ian?
We only support new tree plantings. Unfortunately, no thinning.
Yeah, and we're the same.
And I'll ask because there's been a few thinning questions just in the chat and Q&A. Do y'all know of any other resources out there that are working with subtractive silvopasture conversion? I don't, so I'm very curious too.
I'm not sure about funding, but certainly University of Missouri has some research going on around subtractive silvopasture that would be interesting. Professor Conway is her name, if you want to look up her research.
Awesome. All right. Can you still, so there's going to be some overlap and a little bit of redundancy in questions, but I want to really speak to people's particular questions because I know that's why they're here. So can you still utilize NRCS programs if you participate in these federally funded programs?
Yes, definitely. And I should say as background, you know, NRCS has gotten a large infusion of cash for programs like EQIP, CSP, CRP from the Inflation Reduction Act of a couple years ago. So there is a lot of other NRCS funding that we want to encourage people to also go after. And it may make sense, depending on your land, to go after kind of traditional EQIP on particular acres and then carve off a different place for your application for Catalyzing Agroforestry or EAP, for example. So as long as it's distinctly separate acreage, that is totally fine.
Yeah, as I understand it, the limitation is same practice on the same land is a hard no. Yeah. Okay. Do any of these grants help with associated costs in establishing forages in silvopasture systems?
We do. I love that. That's great. Yeah, no, ours definitely does. That's great. Yeah, shrubs. I should say they often say trees, but it's shrubs and trees. So
the assets program funds tree planting establishment costs. So that includes like planting, tree protection, sourcing of the trees. It does not fund forage establishment.
Yeah, and we can fund also shrubs and the other things that Leif mentioned. But then also, depending on the project, there can be some pasture grass seeding and things like that.
And I'm sorry, I might have misheard. It's forage seeding, not fodder. Sorry.
Sorry, I said forage, not fodder. Or maybe I said fodder. I meant to say forage in any case.
Okay. So we do not pay for seeding of forage. Sorry about that. But we do love fodder crops system. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, definitely. I believe there's a fodder question coming up. Here's thinning. Will category 2 be prioritized over category 1 for application ranking? So that's for Audrey.
No, we need to see both kind of. So yeah, one is not prioritized over the other at this point.
Excellent. Let's see from Ethan Strickler. Hi, Ethan. For the Expanding Agroforestry project, can applicants work with their local FSA USD office to complete the required paperwork? Or do applicants have to work with the TSP provider, or is one recommended over the other?
So basically, if producers already have a relationship with their local FSA office and they maybe already are registered with FSA, if a producer is knowledgeable on how to navigate that process, they are welcome to kind of do it themselves directly. However, a lot of folks, they need some help and support because it's a lot of letters and a lot of forms to know what to get through. And so that's why we have our technical assistance providers to help navigate them through what are the forms, who do you have to ask, all those pieces.
Great. Does silvopasture increase available grass for cattle in pasture land? Is it recommended to adaptive rotational graze cattle in silvopasture systems? And so this is a little bit of a like nitty gritty, almost a technical assistance question. So I don't, we probably won't give a ton of time to it, but if anyone wants to speak to it, please do. Because I know the answer is going to be, it depends, it's unique, da da da. So
I'll just say, yes, it definitely depends, but at some of the Virginia Tech demo sites, we've seen those areas that have black locust or other nitrogen fixing trees. There's a noticeable difference in the pasture quality and the amount of it.
very cool.
And I'll say for us with silvopasture, you know, we highly recommend rotational grazing in general, and certainly with silvopasture systems, it pretty much always makes sense.
Mm-hmm. When will the first round of TNC-EAP applications be announced?
So we had the last deadline, so the first application cycle, the last regional deadline closed last week. And so we're hoping to get back to applicants by the end of next month. So they'll know if they're selected or not, they'll know either way. And they'll get feedback if they're not selected.
All right, keep the questions coming, y'all. So this next one says, what about producers moving out of pine plantation farming? And I'm not sure exactly what that question is asking, but I have heard folks asking, like, does it look like moving forward there might be a place in some of this funding for people who are trying to move out of, you know, these short-term pine rotation systems into something that is a long-term, more permanent carbon sequestration system? Do y'all know if there's anything coming down the pipeline for projects like that, or people who are really trying to convert their practices or have inherited, you know, that's such a good leverage point for a lot of people, is financially being able to access that type of land?
I'm not familiar with any of those resources, and it's also tough. Like the carbon market has like a lot of rules that make sense sometimes, but also don't make sense other times. So for example, like moving out of short-term pine rotations, like if you cut it down to go plant like longer term, like 30, 40, 50 year, like tree rotations, that won't be eligible for carbon funding, even if you're trying to diversify your landscape or plant longer lived trees. Like I said, there's some rules that make sense in some situations and just like also don't in others.
All right, so that's actually the end of our the like open questions, but I'm going to go back into the like answered questions, because I know there's probably still some answers that can be given here, or some like deepening. I know there was a conversation going on about questions or about projects with coppicing and pollarding for animal fodder. And I see that, I know Ian weighed in, and I know that there have been some CAGP projects in the past that have been leaning into that a little bit. And I'm curious if that's something that y'all are seeing, Leif and Audrey, in the projects, some of the project applications that you're working with so far. And if you're kind of looking favorably on that, I just want to tempt the waters there.
Yeah, so the coppicing is not allowed in our carbon program. Pollarding is, though.
Interesting. Is that for the purposes of later DBH measurement?
Yeah, it's you need the stem.
Yes,
you need the tree trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, another carbon rule.
Yeah, and our program's open to it.
I know there's ranking questions. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to there was a specific CAGP question that got answered, but application ranking and maybe what makes things more favorable, or are some of your pools like pretty open? It's like, if you're going to apply and you can make a good case, then we could probably help you out. You know, ranking and really just accessibility, probability of getting an award, that kind of stuff, if y'all would like to comment.
I can say one piece for ours is, you know, going back to the please make as robust of an application as you possibly can at that time. That really helps us assess it as well as possible. We have a set of selection criteria that we use. It's the same across all 30 states. And I think I lost my thought. In terms of selection criteria, I think one of the things that's important is that, you know, we are hoping that this is a win-win solution in terms of profitability and working on operating farms. And so being able to tell the story that you have a plan for how this will be sustainable business-wise for your farm for the long haul is really helpful.
Yeah, and I would say that's, when I say a competitive application, that's exactly what Audrey described.
Yeah, our application process is pretty, we do have selection criteria that that we help guide you on in the process of developing a silvopasture system, but it's not super competitive, I would say.
Okay, great. And there was a question about university eligibility. Is that are all these, are universities eligible for all three of these?
Yes.
Yeah, for us, it's, yeah, universities, NGOs, community farms.
Yeah, we just need an entity that can be registered with FSA.
Yeah, I guess to that question too, is there, other than what we've talked about with land use and overlap and like double dipping federal funds, is there anyone that specifically is ineligible? And this is probably going to point towards leasing more than anything, but would y'all like to speak to that, folks that are ineligible?
I can say that the typical income limits that I believe, Leif, you mentioned that there's typically for NRCS income limits for the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities grant. We don't have to follow those rules. So that opens, like, basically there's no ceiling on income, even though typically there is. And then in terms of leasing, that was really important to us. As long as you can show that you have control of the land through 2028, you can enter into a contract with us.
Just need a W-9 or W-8 for reimbursement. But we want to work with as many people as we can, which includes tribal lands and the groups like that.
I would just say, like,
oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Please.
just the EQIP eligibility is what we look at.
Mhm.
So that is the income limit. And then the other HELC, which is the highly erodible lands, something, I forget what the C stands for. And then the wetlands requirement as well.
All right, EAP question, is tree planting service eligible in budgeting? You're muted.
Tree planting service. So basically, the producer, right, is going to work with that technical assistance provider, and they are going to calculate out what that per tree incentive payment is. That is going to get handed over to the producer, and they are going to be on the hook for planting out the plan that they're contracted to do. And it's up to them budget-wise to manage their budget for all the pieces that are needed to ensure a successful installation that follows NRCS conservation practice standards.
Awesome. I've got a question in the Q&A from Candace Thompson. Candace, could I, would you be willing if I unmuted you, or if I press the allow to speak button to ask that? Because it seems like there's a little more, okay, you can unmute if you would like, but a little more detail on that might be helpful. It's a specific forest farming question.
Yeah, I'm just curious if the Catalyzing Agroforestry Grant can support like infrastructure, like let's say you need to build a place to put your rhino, you need to do some road bars on the access to your farm, stuff like that. And also, you know, if there is forested land, it's, you know, kind of scrubby regrowth after already being harvested from. If we're doing like timber stand improvement and then trying to put in chestnuts, you know, oaks, things like that, is that eligible?
Yes, and so for certain things like with forest farming, with tree stirrups, you can't really get around the infrastructure side of things. But for that budgeting, it needs to be directly related to the project. And so in terms of like things just around the farm, we're not as necessarily going to be funding that within the budget, but things focused on the project that make sure the project is a success, we would fund.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, is the income limit still applicable for nonprofit organizations? So that's probably for EAP and assets.
We have no income limit, so.
Oh, right. Okay.
You're asking all the right questions, and I'm not sure. So I'll have to check on that and get back to you.
Here's a question that I'll follow up with that Ian has already answered for CAGP, but with the, can these funds be used for the removal of invasives in favor of establishing other species?
So ours doesn't explicitly fund that, but again, once somebody gets the incentive payment, they have to plant out to the plan that we said, and it could be as part of site prep that they need to do something with invasives removal in order to ensure that the trees aren't going to get swallowed up.
I would say the same thing as well.
All right, y'all. Well, I'm at the end of our open questions. Hang on, looking at this last one. I think we're good here, unless y'all have more that you would like to share. I know that there are going to be more questions coming up all the time with these funds, and now you have contact information. That link that we shared in the chat a little bit ago that has the table, and I think Katie just dropped it again into the chat, so it's there fresh. That's a living document. We will keep trying to amend that if more questions come up that we can make really available for folks, and that lives on the ASD website. So please share that out. If there's stuff you'd like us to add to that, let us know. And yeah, let us know what other kind of webinars you'd like to hear about. Katie also just dropped a short eval into the chat, and I know that stuff is really annoying, but we ask that you please do it anyway, because it does help us make these sessions better. And I think there's space too to suggest topics for future. But I want to take a moment and just thank you to Audrey and Ian and Leif. We appreciate you taking time out of a random Thursday evening. Is it whatever day it is, Thursday evening, to be here with us. So thank you so much. If there's anything else y'all would like to say, now's the moment.
Thank you guys for the great questions, and thanks guys for hosting this. This was really fun.
Yeah, thanks for hosting this, and thank you all for coming on, all the producers. Looking forward to hearing from you and supporting you in any way we can.
Yeah, glad we could reach out to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks y'all so much, and thanks Katie for your help. I know you're there in the background, but we appreciate
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, have a good night all.